I'm Jace Tyrrell. I head up Opportunity London, and I'm joined today by some excellent partners of Opportunity London. For those that aren't familiar on our mission, we are the capital investment partnership for London, working with every level of London government and about 70 industry partners, including our colleagues on this expert panel today. And that mission to unlock the next 100 billion of capital into real estate, energy, and infrastructure and low carbon, very important part of that investment attraction for us. And we do this in three ways. We have a number of projects, both on and off market, both public and private, that we take out to our investors strategically to unlock that investment. We work with the top investors globally, LPs and GPs across Europe, the Middle East, Far East, Australia, and into the UK marketplace. And we have a series of insights and advocacy in the built environment, which leads us very nicely to our webinar today. So the subject of today's webinar is strategic heat networks. We're going to be deep diving into Brent Cross Town and the work of Vattenfall with Related Argent. So let me begin by introducing you our stellar panel this afternoon. We have three brilliant subject matter experts, colleagues, to take you through some of the learnings of Brent Cross Town. First of all, a fellow Aussie, Claire Martin, who's development manager at Related Argent. An experienced engineer, Claire is integral to the delivery of key sites and wider infrastructure at Brent Cross Town, one of Europe's largest regeneration projects, which you're going to hear about in the next hour. And Claire's role includes overseeing the delivery of the development of the all-electric energy centre and the innovative heat network. She's also worked on high-profile projects across the UK, in Australia and the Middle East. Tom Bowens, head of commercial at Vattenfall, as well as delivering commercial support and leading the development of the Riverside network. Tom has the responsibility for Vattenfall's concession agreement at Brent Cross Town, where he's worked closely with Related Argent since 2021. With a background in global carbon markets and project finance of energy projects in Latin America and Africa, Tom has focused on district heating projects for the last 5 years in this marketplace. And then Hannah Wright, business development manager for Vattenfall. Hannah manages a pipeline of heat network prospects, opportunities and bids right across London. And at Brent Cross Town, she leads a contracts work stream liaising with the new buildings set to connect to this innovative heat network. So we are spoiled today by these subject matter experts, as I say. Before we dive into the main thrust of the conversation this afternoon, a couple of housekeeping points from my side. We're going to kick off with a very brief presentation, 10 minutes, and I'll be timing our panelists to make sure we stick to that, to give an overview of the partnership and the work to date on the network. We're going to be recording this session, so you'll receive a copy of it afterwards and you can share with colleagues and digest it again. And very usefully, we have a Q&A function in the chat box. So although we've got some pre-prepared questions to step us through the hour, we want to hear from you. So please submit your questions into the chat function. You can be anonymous or you can attribute, and we'll try and aim to get to as many of those as possible as we work through the next hour. So let's get started. We're going to dive into the presentation. I'm going to hand over to Claire to kick us off and a bit more of an overview of Related Argent before we dive into Brent Cross Town. Thank you, Claire.
Great, thank you. So who is Related Argent? So Related Argent formed in 2015, and it's actually as a result of Brent Cross Town. When Brent Cross Town was due to be committed for development, both Related Company and Argent LLP were entering into the bid to become the developer at Brent Cross Town. Instead of competing against each other, we actually formed. So Argent, as you may know, has this boasted success of King's Cross, and Related Company is one of the largest privately owned real estate companies in the US, and it has its diamond jewel of Hudson Yards in New York. Next slide, please, Kirsty. So now in 2025, Related Argent is one of the largest privately owned property and urban regeneration businesses in the UK, and we work across residential, workspace, education, retail, hospitality, and leisure. So we try and get into everything. And then next slide, please, Kirsty. Related Argent today, we've done 21.5 million square feet of mixed-use development in the UK at a gross development value of circa £13.4 billion. We've delivered approximately 9,700 homes across the UK, and we employ 180 UK real estate professionals to undertake that development. So Related Argent is also involved in not just Brent Cross Town. We've successfully delivered King's Cross, as we said before, but we're also involved in Heart of Hale, St Pancras Hospital, and the new venture with Derwent in Old Street. Next slide, please. We'll concentrate on Brent Cross Town. So Brent Cross Town, as I said before, went to market for a competitive bid to find a developer in approximately 2015. And actually, Related Argent won that bid. So we have entered into a joint venture with London Borough of Barnet. So in the joint venture, London Borough of Barnet bring the land and Related Argent bring the development function. It is one, as Jay said, it is one of Europe's largest regeneration schemes that is currently in development. Next slide, please. The Brent Cross Town Master Plan and Development Strategy takes on the success story of King's Cross by bringing a truly mixed-use scheme to North London, including park spaces, commercial and residential, and activating as much the ground floor and public realm with retail and commercial. Some of the hero facts on the screen are there will be circa 6,700 new homes in that development and enough office space for 25,000 new office workers. And a really, really great thing also for a central London development is we will have 50 acres of parks and playing fields for our new residents and tenants across Brent Cross Town, and also enhancing the local community. Next slide, please. So Brent Cross Town theoretically is in its very early stages of development. We started construction in approximately 2020, doing the enabling works and some demolition. But since then, we've pushed forward with a lot of residential development. So at the moment, we have 5 plots that have been completed and are now occupied. First occupation was in January this year, and it was a social housing development. And then we've also got 3 further plots in construction, a further 2 resi plots, and our first commercial offering. The first commercial tenant at Brent Cross Town is going to be Sheffield Hallam University, where they will start occupation with their students and alumni in, I think it's September September 2027. And by the end of this year, we're hoping to have, if we are on track with our residential, to have approximately 3,000 residents in Brent Cross Town. So even though we've only started in 2020, we've made it a long way to get to 2025. Next slide, please. So Brent Cross Town, as I said before, we've cornerstoned on the success of King's Cross, and the ethos of Brent Cross Town is based on these 4 pledges. We want to make the place in London for sport and play. We want a town where everyone can flourish. We also are aspiring to be a net zero carbon town and also have greater connections into and out of London. And today, the key thing for us and this panel discussion is a net zero carbon town. Vattenfall are key to us being able to achieve that net zero carbon town because of their innovative nature and the all electric energy centre we are hoping to deliver. Next slide, please, Jace. So the partnership. Related Argent engaged at the very early stages of Brent Cross Town. Before we even started construction, Related Argent entered into a competitive tender to find an ESCO. That ESCO eventually was Vattenfall after a lengthy tender process. And one of the main reasons that Vattenfall won that tender was due to their innovation and also their commercial offering coming to Brent Cross Town. So there are some really key people involved in that partnership. One is obviously Vattenfall, the ESCO. The other is a master developer, us as the developer, and also our plot developers. But most importantly, the end result is what can we deliver for our customers. And when Related Argent went to market for an ESCO, we had some really key objectives that we wanted to obtain. One was we wanted to find a long-term and trusting partner, and the result of that is the 47-year concession agreement that we now have with Vattenfall. Another one was to find a partner that could provide great customer service, reliable and affordable heat to our customers. The only way that we will improve our tenants' lifestyle is also by providing cheaper heat and a great level of service for the energy networks. Another thing was to provide innovation, and Tom will touch on this in a second, but we wanted to find someone that had innovation and best in class, and Vattenfall, using their experience from the continent, have be able to provide us a very innovative energy network that includes both heating and cooling, which is quite rare in the UK. And the final main objective that we did have was to find someone that could provide us the transparency and be able to reappraise the development as the world changes, as the economy changes, that we have a relationship with Vattenfall, an open book financial model that we can remodel, reevaluate and reassess actually what the next steps are for our partnership and delivering energy at Brent Cross Town. Over to you, Tom.
It's me. Thanks, Claire.
Oh,
so hello, everybody. Just a quick introduction to Vattenfall for the uninitiated. So our goal is fossil freedom, which means creating a world where everyone can choose to live, move, make fossil free. We're a European energy company, as Claire said. We have over 20,000 employees, and we've been delivering energy to people's homes for over 100 years. Could you go to the next slide? Thanks, Gertie. So in the UK, what this means is we're delivering district heat networks in 3 key locations. Firstly, up north in Bonnie, Scotland, we've got our partnership with Midlothian Council, and that's a 50-50 joint venture. There we're delivering low carbon energy projects in Midlothian and the surrounding areas just south of Edinburgh. The first phase of that partnership is the Midlothian Heat Network, and that is to serve heat from the nearby Miller Hill Recycling and Energy Recovery Centre to Shawfair Town, so 3,000 homes at Shawfair Town. In Bristol, we're part of the world-leading Bristol City Leap initiative, which is a partnership between Bristol City Council and Amoresco, where we're helping Bristol on their journey to carbon neutrality by 2030 through the delivery of district heating. And you can see our water source heat pump just there in the middle picture. And finally, the reason we're here today, the heat network we are delivering at Brent Cross Town, one of the largest heat networks in the UK. And I won't give too much away now because we'll come to it in more detail. Next slide, please. So we have a 47-year partnership with Related Argent, as Claire has mentioned. We were selected in 2020 as the ESCO to deliver the site-wide heating, and our scope was then expanded in 2022 to include cooling. One of the things that we'll discuss in more detail during the Q&A probably and the discussion is how that 47-year partnership is really a key feature of what makes this whole project so special and so successful. On the left there, you can see an overview of the map. I think Claire, Tom and I are all sort of hovering over those locations at the moment, given our backgrounds. But you can see right there on the far left, the very handsome new Brent Cross West station. And above it, there's an orange rectangle, which represents the main energy centre. And much smaller, further towards the right, you can see the temporary energy centre as we are delivering the network in a phased manner to match demand. Next slide, please. Back over to Tom.
Thanks very much. We wanted to show this slide again just because to emphasize that this is very much a partnership relationship. And one of the unique things is the fact that RA and Brent Cross engaged with the ESCOs very early on in the process. So we signed the original heat concession agreement in 2020. And that has given us an opportunity to work very closely with RA on the design of the network. And so we are effectively working with the route of the network, working with the connections, and that enables us to come in with our long-term operational view. Claire mentioned that this is a 47-year concession agreement. That is a very long time to be in partnership, and by being involved in the design from the very early stages, we're able to sort of optimize that for the operational stage and not just sort of focus on a sort of quick turnaround. And that does have benefits not just for the parties involved, but also for the customers when we come out to deliver it. I think the other important point to note is that, you know, with a development of this scale that is being built out over, you know, decades, you know, it'll be well into the 2030s before Brent Cross is fully developed. There necessarily has to be an element of flexibility, and that has to be balanced off again against the investability of the project. And so we have a concession structure with Related Argent that basically allows us to do that, and provides a lot of flexibility within both the pricing models, and the rollout and the delivery of the network. And as you've seen, it is a combined heating and cooling network. That is two separate networks, basically, a cooling ring main and a heating ring main running under large parts of the site. And that is again being phased. So Hannah mentioned temporary energy centres as one example of how we're doing that. Can we have the next slide, please? We're very proud of the energy centre design here, which, if you have been along the North Circular, you may recognise the structure to the right of that, the multicoloured sort of helter-skelter, I think some people have referred it to, which is the enclosure around the substation there. Our energy centre, we want to be as striking as that, and you see here a render of what it'll look like in the daytime, but it will be lit up at night. And you can sort of see the elevated cooling fans there, the thermal stores. This is what is enabling the net zero heating for, you know, 6,000 homes and all the office space as well. And we want it to be something that the community is proud of. So it's not being hidden away; it's being set in quite a sort of prominent location. If we come to the next slide. This again is just sort of talking to the range of different buildings that we're connecting into the heat network. So there's a lot of offices and then different types of residential accommodation. From our perspective, this is what presents the opportunity, is that this is going to be the largest, we think, combined heating and cooling, low carbon heating and cooling network of its kind in Europe. And what that's enabling us to do is effectively to pump the heatings out of the offices in the summer months, and then use that to heat the hot water in the residential buildings, and therefore you get lots of efficiencies from doing that, and by able to do this not just at a low carbon but on a competitive basis as well. So whilst we are the only supplier of heat, and that there won't be options for those residential customers to have alternative suppliers, we have built into the contracts fair pricing models that will ensure that customers have a fair deal. And I think that speaks to the fact that, you know, we were engaging with RA on this from as early as 2019, you know, well ahead of market regulations coming into force. Mm-hmm. And so our contracts have been able to sort of address that and provide you know, confidence in the pricing of this, the fair pricing of our heat for this whole 47-year concession period. Next slide, Anna.
Thanks, Tom. So onto our customers. Obviously, Tom's touched on there. So we had our first customers come on board early this year, which is very exciting, and we are growing rapidly with 350 homes now receiving heat. Obviously, extending all the way into the future, where we intend to serve the full 6,700 customers in the site-wide with heating and hot water. One of the things that has become very clear from conversations that we're having with our customers since working on Brent Cross Town is that you can't really over-engage with customers. We provide an all-inclusive service, including dedicated care and monitoring, and we often host face-to-face events to really engage with the community. And I think at one of these events for plot 12, which was the L&Q plot, we had a face-to-face engagement event before the customers moved in, and we had 75 residents turn up to that event. So we could see that engagement was really, really strong, and we have found those face-to-face events to be very successful. So that is something that we will continue to do throughout the period of the concession. As Tom just alluded to there, though, before regulation comes into place in January next year. Since 2024, we have been registered with the Heat Trust. For those that don't know, the Heat Trust is a voluntary customer service organisation. So it essentially ensures that customers get the same experience that they would do with another utility like your gas or electric. So they make sure that we're meeting our guaranteed standards of service and that we are held to account from a performance perspective. So yeah, I think on to the next slide, please, Kirsty. As a sort of nice segue into the discussion and the Q&A, I think we were all having a conversation in the run up to this about how to distill down the key things that we're going to come and discuss. But I think the heat network, with all of its benefits, is helping the community in Brent Cross Town to glow and grow, hopefully to glow too, glowing, flourishing, growing, all of the positive adjectives. And in the discussion next, we are going to really dig down into what those benefits are, the decisions that we made that have helped to bring about such a successful project, and what exactly it's like for customers on the Brent Cross Town heat network. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you to the three of you. That was an excellent overview, and there's a lot we can dive into this. I have to say, we're very fortunate at Opportunity London to have a number of major regen projects and infrastructure projects across the capital, but this does stand out as a genuine partnership. And I think a shout out also to Barnet Council, which I know we're going to come on to, and the partnership there, but also with Vattenfall and this really innovative approach to energy and to transition as well. And I think every time I hear more about this project, the more I sort of think this is the exemplar for the capital and the country as well. I was struck by Tom, 47 years. We'll sort of muse over how many prime ministers or energy ministers we might go through in that time as well, and where we are in our low carbon transition in 47 years. Maybe we'll get into that as well. Just a reminder, colleagues, there is the Q&A function in the chat, so please don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. This is your session to ask our experts here sort of what lessons and what you can take perhaps for your own projects and schemes that you're thinking about as well in London and across the UK. Let me dive in then to our questions, some pre-prepared ones for our panel. We're going to kick off just generally on sort of heat networks, and probably to Related Argent here, Claire, to kick us off. But I think heat networks aren't as well known in the market here as perhaps the energy solutions that we have. We talk a lot about air source heat pumps. Obviously, there's a regulatory environment we're moving into and incentives there. But as master developers, what sort of prompted you to sort of go with this solution and choose a heat network? And sort of how did your heat network journey begin?
So for us, it was natural for a number of different reasons. One is the outline planning permission that we are guided by required a centralised heating network for residential only. So we took that a step further. We also have the experience of King's Cross, where we have actually a heating energy centre and a cooling energy centre, providing both heating and cooling to all of our tenants at King's Cross. It's not combined, it's not as innovative, and it has combustion, which is going to be removed. So instead of just going with our planning permission, it was a natural step to, when we engage with Vattenfall, to actually say, not just where the residents going to be connected to the heating network. Let's make it a number of steps further, and every single development plot at Brent Cross Town must connect to the heating network. There is a heating exclusivity that we've entered into with Vattenfall for that. And then in addition to that, we went another step further to get the innovation and the efficiencies, as Tom was suggesting, with capturing heat from the offices by actually providing a cluster of offices, that cooling network. So for us, in terms of development, that was a natural step forward for innovation. But a huge impact of that is actually that we bring on a partner that is they're technical experts in order to deliver this quite challenging network, but also in order to get an expert team to manage the network, operate it, and maintain it on behalf of us, where we then don't have to do it. Our tenants don't have to get involved. Our service charge isn't impacted by having a private service offering. And also, we were noting before that we've got the King's Cross model, where we would like to activate as much of the ground floor as possible. Having a centralized energy network means that we're pulling plant out of our buildings and actually putting it centrally so that our buildings can focus on activating our ground floor, having more use, having community space, but then also relieving our development quantum and allowing more vertical development, lettable space. So that was our easy solution, I think. Easy reasoning.
Easy. Talk a little bit just on the procurement process, because I think sometimes these can be barriers, and I think the pace of the process and sort of working in there, and obviously not quite in the public sector domain here, given the way you've structured Brent Cross Town, but I think our listeners will find that interesting.
Yeah, I think it was still a journey, wasn't it, Tom? It was pre my time, but it was still a journey. But Tom touched on it before. I think the early engagement is the reason that it became so successful in terms of our procurement. We entered into the procurement market before any development was even thought through, any investment decision was made on any plots. So we had Vattenfall or an ESCO. The idea was to have an ESCO there ready and waiting to be our partner when that first tranche of design needed to happen. Vattenfall are there every day. They've got people on site every day, and design, pre-contract, post-contract, and supporting in adoptions to make sure that actually what is installed is fit for purpose, but also is also fit for future flexibility. So the procurement process was long. The negotiation legal process was quite lengthy as well. And I think that's where regulation will really help, that we can actually reduce that negotiation point where you've got lawyers sitting in rooms trying to negotiate. If it's a regulated market, there's a bit more already oven ready there that you can progress through and move into your development process earlier. But yeah, it was early procurement. It's a hot market, so, and Vattenfall are really well experienced.
Yes, we'll come on to that experience as well, and I think perhaps in a more regulated environment, more standardization of that process has speeded up as well, which we'll see. So over to Vattenfall, what was sort of the heat network solution? Why do you think from your side this was right for Brent Cross Town?
I can take that one. So there are always key things that we look for when we're deciding whether to build a heat network in an area or to bid for an opportunity. And I think the key things that stand out here are the density, obviously, diversity, and the nature of the site being a new development. So first on the density point, obviously heat networks work best in highly dense urban areas, with Brent Cross Town being a brownfield site with 6,700 homes built, very firmly ticks that box. So I think that was clear. From a diversity perspective, it's a mixed use site, so it's not just resi. We've obviously got retail, we've got cafes, university blocks coming in, and what that does is that brings a diverse portfolio of connections and enables things like the cooling to be present in the scheme, which brings efficiency gains and all kinds of other benefits. And then on the third point, it being a new development, obviously it's a brownfield site. From a capital perspective, it's the most efficient time to connect to a heat network when the buildings are just being built. So all of those things taken together are very positive. I think if we look away from the site towards the people that we're looking to partner with, we always look for quality counterparties, and also that we have a strong alignment on the shared vision. So given that we're working for fossil freedom, Related Argent's net zero goals so clear, having that sort of shared pursuit of the interest of net zero is really important. And so the sort of quality counterparties and the strong vision for decarbonisation are two essential pieces of the puzzle. So it's sort of glaringly obvious that those things were all present for us in this process.
And we might touch on this a bit later, but I'll go there now. I mean, I think sometimes the feedback, ground up development, large scale, perhaps easier to build the infrastructure into this. But we have a lot of, existing buildings and schemes that have, retrofit requirements, mixed use as well. Do the solutions from Vattenfall's side, work across those different diverse types of built form with some of these solutions as well that you're bringing forward?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I obviously touched on Bristol before, and we have a sort of rotating door of people coming to do site visits of the water source heat pump at Castle Park in Bristol.
Yeah.
But we've carried out a series of retrofit connections there, so it's not just new developments that we're delivering on. Obviously, it is a different kettle of fish, so there are a whole host of new and different challenges with connecting retrofit, but it all has to happen, right?
It does. And I guess scale is important there, right? In terms of that sort of upfront capital and then building forward that the demand side, but also the scalability is going to be important.
Yeah.
Colleagues, there is a chat box, as I say, there's an opportunity to ask questions. So please start filling that box up because we have a good 29 minutes left on this session. So we'd like to hear from you and some of the questions you have for our panel. I think, Hannah, you touched on this, but perhaps for Related Argent, then back to Vattenfall. But I think we know the heat is important, but we know that our cities are heating up and we're going to have to cool as much as heat our schemes. And I think it's very interesting that you moved to a heating and a cooling solution. And I've certainly seen some of these heat cooling solutions in parts of Asia, in the cities that we look at over there, and also in Australia as well. So it'd be good to hear more on that side of it and what you've brought in as a solution here into Brent Cross Town. And perhaps back to you, Claire, to kick us off here on the cooling side.
Yeah, so our cooling at the moment, but this is, I think, Tom, you can attest to this, our cooling, we talk about it, I think, every month about how flexible our cooling network could be. Our cooling at the moment is purely for commercial. Which for us is a sensible solution because, as I said before, it frees up a lot of space. It also provides efficiency in the energy centre itself, but also it's a great marketing ploy. Shouldn't say ploy, but a great marketing ploy for commercial tenants that, much like Vattenfall, commercial tenants want fossil freedom. They want to be net zero, that this is an opportunity that we saw would be great for the development. I think in terms of cooling homes, there's going to be a time in the future that either the regulations will become a bit more lenient in terms of overheating, and I say lenient in terms of passive provision, closing blinds, opening windows and stuff when calculating. But there is a very real struggle with cooling in accordance with current regulations. We talk about it daily. There are some resi plots that we have at Brent Cross that might connect to it. We currently have a co-living plot that is considering connecting to it. So having that flexibility of having a network outside your plot does help us in terms of providing a level of flexibility to our vertical development if they take it or not. We're hoping that technology advancements in the future would also mean that, where we do need cooling, we can provide it from our energy centre within the current plant capacity. But we'll see what happens. I think regulation will play a really key part of what the final solution is for developments moving forward. But having a cooling network outside some of our plots is a huge benefit for us trying to drive forward with current regulations.
And could move into the residential side in the future?
It could. We definitely have some plots that have been considering it. I think with the way that global warming is and climate change is happening, and as an Australian, not having a house with air conditioning when you're having regular 30-degree days is not fun. So I think it will start moving that way unless there's major change happening in the industry and in the world to reverse climate change.
Yeah, quite. Vattenfall, you want to talk about the cooling solution?
Yeah, I mean, as heat network developers, one of the goals for us is to find the lowest cost, lowest carbon source of heat to put at the end of the pipe as the supply. And one of the features of the Brent Cross site is that there isn't any obvious sort of source of waste heat. There isn't an energy from waste plant or a large data center cluster or any industrial waste heat sources. And so we were effectively generating our own heat and cooling on site, and that's why we've got this all electric energy center. By combining the heating and cooling, the cooling effectively becomes a waste heat source, and so as I mentioned earlier, we're able to take the heat out of the offices and put it into the hot water systems during the summer, and that does provide significant opportunities for efficiency. And that is something that was obviously a very attractive part of the cooling network for us. I think there are other benefits to that, and I think Claire touched on space. And traditionally, if a building's got cooling, the roof of that building is going to be covered with chillers and condensers, and it's very ugly kit if you can see it, but it also uses up valuable space. And as all developers and homeowners in London know, space is valuable, and it allows alternative uses of that space, which again can provide enhancements to the communities and the buildings. So that was an important factor as well. And I think just the simplicity for the building owners and for the tenants is just not having to manage replacement or maintenance of those assets, and just knowing that effectively, if anything goes wrong, it's not their responsibility. It's Vattenfall's. There's agreed sort of recovery processes where we will get everything back up and running within agreed timeframes. And that is, as Claire has attested to, that is very attractive for their commercial clients.
It's interesting, just on BTR, as an aside, I was at a sort of industry session last night, and they were sort of future gazing 47 years ahead as well, in terms of, what that requirement would be, and having resilient energy, and also other bits of infrastructure, whether it's digital as well as people, our customers, will be paying a premium for that, and interesting, particularly in the BTR space, as we bring in more institutional investors and different tenure. It's going to be fascinating how that rolls out, and the energy requirements sort of linked to that will become quite mandatory almost, but also not just a hygiene factor, but something that everyone will need to be doing as well within those developments. Touched on data centers very quickly. I mean, I know that's not necessarily the strategy here, but I think there's some innovation in the marketplace around the requirement for data centers linked to energy networks and how the redistribution of heat. And this wasn't a pre-planned question, but given you went there, I don't know if Tom or Hannah, you want to touch on that, because we certainly saw some interesting approaches to this in Amsterdam actually a couple of weeks ago. And I wonder if you're thinking around that, either here or in other parts of the country or the capital as well.
But very much so. I mean, it's you and I were standing in a data hall in Amsterdam that was sort of the size of a few basketball courts, and yet it was generating the same amount of heat as 5,000 homes with their heating on at full blast. And and you just sort of think the idea that heat is not captured and diverted into the local communities to offset gas boilers is just unimaginable, really. And it's obviously the pace at which these data centers have come to market has sort of caught people by surprise. But we've at Vattenfall have actually been looking at data center connections into heat networks for about a decade, and we do understand it, and it is very much something that if there is a data center within range of our heat networks, we will be looking to connect it up as a heat source. And we would encourage any local authority looking at consenting data centers, to factor heat offtake into that. There is a responsibility for planners and data center operators to ensure that those plants are being built in locations and designed with heat offtake in mind.
Yeah, I think also some of our work at Opportunity London is looking at the policy environment from a London perspective. So we have the new London plan being produced next year. We have the London infrastructure plan. I think all of us know this, I think, in the industry, that sometimes the planning policy doesn't match the sort of market demand. And I think it's going to be very important as we step into the new London plan or the infrastructure plan that we're thinking about the innovation, the classification of land, how we can join some of this up to sort of move with the market and move with the customer demand, and obviously move towards, our low carbon future as well. I found there are some questions here, which is good. I was actually in the wrong box, so I'm pleased I've now found some of the Q&As, which is good. I'm going to come to those in a second, but just on the infrastructure side, I mean, I think with some of these big, large-scale sites and projects across the capital, those very early decisions on infrastructure delivery and securing, those decisions are sort of fundamental. So probably back to Claire here, what were some of those decision makings in the infrastructure piece? And I think the transport piece is very interesting as well, that you came forward very early with that and obviously thought about the energy as well, Brent Cross Town.
Yeah, I think transport, so I think one of the great things, we haven't spoken about it, it's not really on topic, but Brent Cross Town, Brent Cross West station, that was only due to be delivered, I think it was halfway through the development, and it was actually LBB, our JV partner, were the ones that said, hang on, let's try and bring it forward early, because you know, we need to have a way to access this site rather than walking 10 minutes or walking through an industrial site. So, but in a similar vein, actually, the concession agreement had a similar trigger. It had a similar trigger of we would only need the main energy centre when 1/3 of development would come forward. But we collectively made the decision with Vattenfall to actually trigger that early, remove a complete phase of temporary supply and bring forward that capital investment, that design earlier on to A, remove combustion, but also B, to have that permanent source there. And Vattenfall coming as a capital partner were one of the reasons that we could do that. You know, it's a lot of capital to bring forward, but the concession agreement has allowed Vattenfall to take that risk and bring forward that for us. But in terms of the pipes and wires and everything else to do with the district heating and district cooling network, one of the first things that happened after the concession agreement was signed was Vattenfall produced all their specifications, all their design requirements that actually inform all of our standalone design teams, our consultants, to actually deliver those energy networks, both externally and also on plot. So, and then Vattenfall are there every step of the way. So the early decision making of having the Vattenfall specifications there, their quality of design really is the way that all of our early stages of infrastructure are easily adopted. And Vattenfall feel comfortable that they're fit for purpose because they signed them off. They all witnessed everything and they have all the documentation to say this is in accordance with our specifications. So as much as our consultants design it, Vattenfall own it. They own everything from, you know, cradle to gate. They help us, and it's, I think having Vattenfall there is real, well, an energy partner there really early as well is really key, because the knowledge in the industry, it needs to be scaled up. It's still quite a young, Tom and Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong, it's still a young market in terms of technical experience. It's quite challenging to build. Pipes and wires quite simple, but once you get to the commissioning stage and trying to distribute energy, heating and cooling, it gets really challenging. So actually having Vattenfall there to support our contracting teams, to support our designers, to upskill them and deliver a you know, best-in-class network, I think that has been key. That means that we've got an asset that will be there for the duration of 47 years, and Vattenfall want to adopt it. So that long-term focus was really key early stages on.
And I guess for Tom and Hannah, you know, we often see the infrastructure requirements very early on, but actually bringing the providers the expertise. You know, how important is that? And are you often in there at that stage, or is this a trend you're now seeing with your clients and partners that you're working with?
I mean, I think at the basic level, you know, by having the operator there involved in the design from the very beginning and the construction, you know, it shifts some of the focus away from sort of profitability and onto quality, and that is where we've been able to sort of ensure that what's being designed here is fit for the future, you know, fit for a 47-year concession. And it is, as Claire said, a partnership, and whilst we have divided scope, so you know, it doesn't make sense for Vattenfall to be delivering assets, you know, inside the buildings that Related Argent is constructing. It's Related Argent's contractors, but we have teams that will work with the Related Argent contractors who will basically monitor, as Claire said, and witness all of those installations and ensure that it's being done to the specifications. And we have a defined set of specifications that work for each type of building and for the buried networks. And then when we come to adopt those assets, you know, we're rigorously checking to make sure that they meet the standards, and therefore that the system's going to operate as it should. And that's sort of what I mean by the partnership. Is, you know, it's not we are working together, not just with RA, but through their contractors and subcontractors to ensure the whole sort of life cycle of the project is overseen.
I mean, element of risk share there, but also opportunity, right, when it is generally built in as a partnership, which you've done here. I'm going to go to some of the questions in the Q&A. One here from Kuhnman Kane. Looking at this, the introduction of additional regulations, and you'll tell me what the HNTAS is in terms of that acronym, which I'm sure everyone on this call will know, apart from me.
Acronym alert.
Is it holding you back your plans to begin installation? Is there a risk that once installed, you may have to go back to sites to bring them back up to any additional regulatory standards? And I think regulation comes up a lot in these conversations, and long-awaited regulation, but I don't know who would like to take that question.
I can start, and then Tom, feel free to jump in if there's anything. I mean, so firstly, HNTAS stands for the Heat Network Technical Assurance Scheme.
Excellent.
So we have a team of people at Vattenfall working very closely with government to feed back on the policies coming forward, or the detail is still being fleshed out. Certainly, it's not holding back our delivery plans. We are obviously moving ahead with all of the development as planned, as per the schedule. I think that we fully support the technical assurance scheme, but also want to sort of steer the details away from anything that is going to be very over cumbersome from an administrative perspective, and really make sure that it's proportionate to what it needs to do, compared to other utilities that don't necessarily face the same level of sort of administrative work accompanied with guaranteeing technical standards.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's definitely, one of the risks of being an early mover in a new market is that, the regulations are still evolving, and as Vattenfall, we've been operating heat networks for decades and decades across Europe. We've had at our peak over sort of 1.5 million customers on our networks, and so we've been able to borrow a lot of the sort of standards. And so when we've been designing and thinking about the networks here, in the absence of a regulation, we've worked very closely with Heat Trust, and we've sort of looked to meet or exceed the sort of Heat Trust requirements as a sort of precursor to getting into regulations. And similar with technical standards, is we have tried to sort of exceed where we think the market's going to go, so to sort of protect us from that risk, and we've been able to do that while sort of maintaining the competitiveness of the delivered heat.
It's also another benefit of being a sort of company based out of Europe that has sort of quite a few steps ahead of the UK in its heat network game, whereby they've sort of those lessons learned on the continent we have looked to apply those in our work in the UK.
I mean, Claire, from your side, is this high risk for you, or a sort of managed risk that you're working through?
In terms of the HNTAS regulation, it's a managed risk. We've to be completely transparent, there's risk profiles in the concession that actually Vattenfall manage that risk on our behalf, essentially, within reason. So we rely on Vattenfall as well to give us insight, and also our consultants like Bureau Hambold to give us insight into what's emerging and what's coming forward. We obviously do that where we have that risk exposure on all different types of regulation, but very much welcoming a regulated heat market, just so that it can scale up and we can get the support as needed and become a bit more robust as a development, but also to support other developments in and around.
I think what I'm struggling with Vattenfall is to that expertise of the customer you've had with your other European schemes for a long time as well, but also the regulatory technical standards that you can bring that insight from other parts of the world. And obviously Europe, where you've been operating to this market, is hugely valuable for the partners that you're working with, I'm sure. Dan Johnson, which I hope is the same Dan Johnson I've worked with for almost 2 decades, which I think it is by the look of those questions there. But I think looking at the complexity of London, different ownerships, public and private sector, different estates. Obviously, I know, Dan, you're working in the West End and Knightsbridge. How do you sort of overcome that where you've got multiple owners, which obviously the benefit of Brent Cross Town is single sort of ownership and the sort of master plan developer. And linked here, Dan, on your question around sort of the carbon savings, can you sort of appraise those and capture some of those in terms of the district heating approach, some of the benefits there? So I don't know who wants to take that. Probably Vattenfall from your side.
I think you're quite right. I mean, that is one of the unique features of Brent Cross is it is a contained site, and we're sort of working on it. It's a brownfield site, so we're not sort of dealing with existing buildings or roads. I think we're no stranger to that in the UK as well, because we've got our heat network in Bristol, where we've got a concession to deliver, I think, over 200,000 homes with heat there. And that is involving connections to a number of both existing and new buildings, and going through busy city centre streets, congested utility channels and things. So we've got things like local development orders in place that simplify some of the planning for the sort of under road networks. And we work very closely with local authorities, and that is something that we don't shy away from at Vattenfall. Is actually, we think that, you know, partnerships as we have in Bristol and in Scotland with local authorities is a sort of core to what we do, and that can help. I think from a business development point of view, you know, just being very, very clear about our pricing structures and the timing with which we can get buildings connected. The other thing that's very important when we are looking to connect buildings is, you know, the timing of getting a heat network to a building, and perhaps a building being ready to connect, whether it's because it's being constructed or replaced, or whether because their existing assets, you know, their gas boilers have been replaced and they want to look at an alternative technology. You know, getting the exact timing of the pipe coming outside that building may not happen at the right time. And so we have solutions that we can address that, and that mostly relies around temporary plant, and historically that's tended to be gas boilers, you know, sort of containerized gas boilers, but actually we're also developing low carbon solutions as well. So that's either with biofuels, or even sort of containerized heat pumps that don't take up very much space, and where the electrical connection's available, you know, we can basically park them up outside the building, and they can sit there for as long as necessary until we're able to sort of connect to the wider network. And that might even be involved. I mean, Bristol is sort of evolving as a series of isolated networks that will eventually join together and become one. And you know, we can address that. And it is an absolute necessity for heat networks really to be able to sort of have that flexibility.
But one thing that we haven't touched on so much, which is a huge benefit for customers and the broader community at Brent Cross Town, is that is also pollution. I thought I saw some new research yesterday about the link between low-income areas in the UK still facing the highest level of toxic air pollution, and with heat networks that is just eliminated. So yeah, it's healthier homes, healthier air that we're breathing in. So
I was going to come on to that question as well with the tenants, because I think obviously the environmental impact, but there's social benefits as well, and we think about that. And I think I was quite struck, you know, some of the first customers that connected, you know, to the Brent Cross Town network were your social housing tenants. And I guess the question is, how do you ensure the pricing is fair for those tenants, and the benefits of that as well with other heating solutions? I don't know, Vattenfall wants to take this one for us.
I think so. First off, we always ensure that cost parity with the other low carbon solutions, so, you know, the alternative. So as per the Future Home Standards, we don't compare to the gas boiler because they're no longer allowed in new developments. So we're looking at the price of an air source heat pump solution, for example, and we will always make sure that we are competitive in that respect. I think other thing that we're getting feedback on is that these homes are warm. You know, the homes are very well insulated at Brent Cross Town, and so in terms of their usage charge, you know, people often report that their usage charge is lower than they sort of expected, which is great. I think in terms of how we review our costs, we do that on an annual basis, and we always work with Related Argent. You know, they're informed and aligned on the process for reviewing the costs every year, and where we would make changes. You know, we have a very extensive range of sort of customer experience initiatives, and making sure that we communicate those changes and that they are understood by residents, as I sort of alluded to in the presentation. Yeah, I think that covers it.
Gosh, I'm conscious of time. Only 5 minutes left, so I'm going to have to squeeze in a few questions here and then briefly summarize. But Claire, we touched on this as well the other day in the conversation, the commercial tenants, the benefit to them, and particularly from a leasing strategy perspective from your side. You know, how important has this been on that side of the development and sort of the customers and tenants you're aiming to attract?
Yeah, for commercial, as I touched on before, hugely important. I think if anyone's ever been to Brent Cross, there's a curved walkway, and it was some of the first advertising hoarding we put up, and all over it is Vattenfall.
Yes.
So
yeah,
it's got all the good kind of like our net zero pledge aspirations and our flourishing town aspirations literally plastered in your face as soon as you walk out of that station to say, hey, come work here, come live here. For commercial, it's it's quite important for us to be able to get the all-electric solution with that low carbon intensity of heat. It really helps us get our various accreditations like neighbours, especially.
Yes.
In order to kind of secure those tenants and actually increase the square foot value so that we can, keep building high quality development at Brent Cross Town. It also helps with the wider model. So in terms of financial model, having that lucrative, having commercial customers on the heat network while we deliver the resi is really important, because it gives Vattenfall that guaranteed pipeline of heat supply, so that actually, because there's that guaranteed pipeline, and Vattenfall have a, as much as we all know today, a broad understanding of how Brent Cross will deliver, that does actually help us not just keep out, cheap heat for tenants, but also helps us manage our commercial heat, because as much as commercial people want net zero, they still have to pay the heat bills at the end of the day and the cooling bills. So that it's paired with that is both for occupancy, but also just to get more tenants to site.
Yeah. I'm going to squeeze a question here from Andrew from IGM, one of our partners also for Opportunity London. But looking at the design life of the system, how do you envisage the renewal of the system components, and I guess the capex of that through the life cycle as well?
Yeah, I mean that's obviously something we build into our models, and we tend to look at it on a component life cycle basis rather than a sort of plant life cycle basis. So the nature of these technologies that we're using is that you can replace assets within the individual heat pumps themselves, and so you can sort of ensure that not only is your efficiency working at best throughout the life cycle of the plant, but actually you can extend the sort of life cycle by replacing assets. And so we do envisage that over the course of 47 years, we are going to be replacing these assets a number of times, and that's built into our pricing structures. And I would say that who's to say what the technology of the future might be, and that the concession structure allows for that flexibility, that we can, if necessary, and if there's alternative solutions that work better, we can replace that in. And ideally do that within our pricing structure as well. So that's obviously something that we think of over the full life of the concession. The pipes themselves are designed, that they should last the life of the concession, but sort of the valves and the energy center assets will be replaced.
Got you. Look, a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to combine this together. So I guess a brief summary of your advice to others wanting to bring in heat network solutions into their schemes and their projects. And I'll only be mean to Claire and Tom on this one. Again, if you could do it again, what would you do differently in the journey of this, and your advice on that as well? So kicking off with Hannah, perhaps, and then we'll go to Tom and to Claire.
I think from a BD perspective, obviously, I think that it's worth speaking, especially about having a customer-centric approach. And, with Brent Cross Town, we worked from very early on with the sales team and the customer care team at both Related Argent, but also for other plots that are connected in the development, and just really getting in early on and having those conversations and making sure that your teams are aligned, and that the understanding of heat networks is really clear, and that then filters down to your customers so that people aren't left out in the cold, pardon the pun.
Yeah, quite. Tom.
I think what's the development has shown is actually this combined heating and cooling system really is a success and is working. And I think initially we set out with just the vision of doing the heating on its own, and then we sort of added the cooling in second under a second concession. And that's created a bit of complexity. We've sort of managed to retain the flexibility and the ethos of the agreement. But I think I'm sure Claire would agree that were we to do it again, I think we would commit to the combined heating and cooling solution from day one and do it all under one concession.
Yeah, definitely stole my thunder there. I would definitely say I wish we had one concession and not two. We're actually currently going through a deed of variation of the concessions at the moment, and it would just be a lot easier if we had just one. But we as Tom suggested, we're navigating that And we're navigating that together through the various financial models, and everything is largely the same. Wish it was just one. I think that is my main one as well, unfortunately.
Thank you. Look, our time is up. I have to say, part of our privilege is to work with many projects, but our mission, that 100 billion, is to obviously unlock our capital investment into infrastructure, into real estate, low carbon. And there are a number of funds that we talk to globally that want to invest into London in social and environmental impact funds. But what's hugely valuable is this genuine partnership and that de-risking and coming in together, both of the equity investors, but also the developers and the partners, and the energy solutions, which Vattenfall provides so much expertise and experience. My three big takeaways were that the genuine partnership approach, and I think we didn't get into the local authority side, but between the provider, the solution provider, and the developer, I think the customer-centric nature of this, we spoke a lot in the pre-calls around this as well, but that's very true and quite striking here that we see with Brent Cross Town. And then I think, the expertise, we're stepping into this. It's still, as I say, an immature market or a growing marketplace for us and a regulatory environment they're working through. But I think the more we can learn and step through this together, the more we're going to attract the investment, but more importantly, we're going to get to our low carbon future, which we all want. So thank you very much to our brilliant panel. We'll all send the recording around. Hopefully all those Q&As got some answers in the box there. And if you click on the QR code, you'll be able to see a lot more on what's happening in Brent Cross Town with Vattenfall. And we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar as we delve into some other topics as well in the energy infrastructure space. Thank you very much, everyone.